Hello, hello, and welcome to this episode of The Creative Pause. My name is Susan Padron, and I am here with my co-host, who I will allow to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Stacey Faye. It's so good to be with you again today. And we are here, like we are at each episode, to offer a place of calm, a smile, a sense of joy or connection, or anything that might be helpful to you as we navigate this time that we're all in. And we're really excited today to have Cristina with us. We'll formally introduce her in a moment, but she will talk a lot about food and our relationship to food, at this time, which I know is so complex on a normal basis, and even more so now that in the time we're in. So we'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, we always like to check in and see how everyone's doing and to share how we're doing as well. To keep this show real and genuine and vulnerable, because we know we're all navigating some difficult emotions. So I will share, Susan will share, and Cristina will share also. And we invite you at home to take a moment to write it down or say it aloud or do anything that might be helpful in thinking about and kind of just vocalizing wherever you happen to be today. And so I'll start. I'm doing okay. I'm trying to, move through some anxiety and difficult emotions around giving birth in this pandemic, and trying to, where I can, first of all, sit with those emotions and not just escape them, because I think I did that for probably at least the first month and 3/4 of this. And the past week, it's coming to the surface. So I'm trying to just sit with those emotions and give them space to breathe, which I think is one part of it, but then also try to figure out how can I still celebrate, this birth coming up? How can I still make it special? And how can I take action where it feels right to take action around it? Which, of course, things like setting up the nursery are very concrete things that can help with that. But trying to kind of have a mix of not running away from the emotions, but also trying to do some things that can be helpful to move through them and translate them into something a little more hopeful. So that's where I'm at today. It's been a lot of my thinking today and a lot of the work today, because we're actually setting up the nursery today. So it's exciting. How are you doing, Susan?
Doing okay. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I think I need to get back into creating a better practice of stillness for myself. And like myself without having any other real distractions around me. I've been kind of like thinking that I'm doing that for myself, but I'm still building in that time in a way where I'm multitasking. Like, oh, I have time to myself, putting that in air quotes, but I'm using that to like do something for the show or do something like taking a shower. And what I think I really need to do is find time to get back into a meditation practice, aside from just having wonderful guests on the show to walk us through a meditation, which I've been so grateful for. But I think that's also what has gotten me a little bit lazy about it too, because I'm like, oh, I'll just meditate on the show. It's fine. And I think that I need to get back into that inner work, and not be so afraid of that stillness and that alone time for myself. Because prior to this, I loved alone time. Like I just was great about making time for myself and making the time to do that inner work. And now I've been, I think, afraid of it, because that's when the sadness and all of those feelings of grief come back. And I know it's not healthy to avoid them. So I am talking about it on the show for a sense of accountability, and also as a way to just help myself process it. So yeah, I'm gonna move forward with that. I'm pretty determined. But Christina, how are you?
I am doing pretty well. I feel like I totally can jive with both of you. I'm not pregnant, Stacey, so I can't quite jive with, like, I can't vibe with that completely, but I can understand how complex that would feel right now. I feel like I have a lot of anxiety and I'm overwhelmed and I'm not dealing with that. So I can only imagine how heavy that could be. So for me personally, I actually wrote this to my list this week, and I was kind of sharing. I'm kind of a make stuff happen kind of person. Excuse me.
You
And
can totally curse on the show, by the way. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Stacey and I support it completely, and so does our audience. And if
I
not,
caught it mid-word.
no, you're fine. I just didn't want you to feel like you had to censor yourself, but please continue.
Well, I am definitely someone who tends to, like, when I'm faced with something, I jump into action, and I'm like, let's get this done. All right, here's what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna handle it. I'm a make a plan type person, and that's probably I know how a lot of my own anxiety is manifested. I plan. I try to do what I can to control what I can control, and then try to allow myself to be flexible for what I can, right? And I think for the first month, I felt really good about how I was handling it and how I was doing stuff. Of course, there were hard days and there were tough times and stuff in between then, in frustrations and what have you. But I felt like kind of like my introvert self was like, I've been training for this my whole life. Like, I can stay home, like, no problem, like, whatever, that's fine with me. But then interestingly enough, I'm not really alone that much because I have a husband and a toddler at home. So there's like this huge piece of me, this introvert self, that I can relate to Susan, like what you're talking about, that alone time that I haven't been getting, and like a real refilling of myself on a regular basis and doing things that I like. And so I kind of feel like I got to this point, and then just yesterday I was bubbling over this week a little bit, and my anxiety came out in full force, the whole thing. And I realized I was doing so much action, like, to kind of cope. And of course, we can talk about this with food too, but it's relevant here as well, and it's a good segue. But we default to what we know when we're in times of difficulty, and what I know is make a plan. so I did that. And I think right now, the part that feels the most overwhelming to me and the most unsettling is the fact that there's really so much uncertainty about when this is going to be over. And when this first started, I thought, okay, well, we're on lockdown for 2 weeks. No big deal. Like, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. And then those 2 weeks came and gone. And I remember thinking, even then, a month, 2 months, whatever, we can do that, and I think the weight of all of that is finally starting to really catch up with me. And quite frankly, the exhaustion of it all. Like, this is really traumatic, and it's exhausting trying to stay the course of, all the things that we have been doing, and I have been doing, and taking care of my family and being supportive of my family and coming up with fun things for me and my daughter and my husband and I to do together. It's a lot, So to every mom out there, like, this shit's not easy. And even for non-parents too, it's not easy. But that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I am right now. Working through it and trying to find my own moments of like some fun along the way. I realize I haven't been having a lot of fun. I've been getting things done and not making enough time for play. And so that's been kind of a new thing for me, getting outside when it's nice out, getting in our like little concrete jungle garden that I have in our back patio, and dance parties at dinner and at breakfast with my daughter and my husband, and cranking up, some Biggie and having a good time. I think it's honestly those types of moments, that make it a little bit better. And food plays a big role in that.
It's interesting, the theme, right? It seems like all three of us are like, it's a week where like a lot of the ways we maybe distract ourselves or been action people, like, because Susan and I are both like, let's get to it, right? That's what this whole show has been. People are like, how are you doing the show? We're like, it's because we got to action right away. But then it catches up with you, like the anxiety or the sadness or the other emotions. And so it's interesting that's kind of the thread that is tying all three of us together in terms of our week and where we're at. And I read an article yesterday at WHYY shared and I shared with Susan about the imperative nature of boredom and of play and of doing nothing, allowing yourself to do nothing. It doesn't mean you're on your phone scrolling. It means you literally are doing nothing. You're kind of just allowing your mind to wander. And that's the purpose of this show. But interestingly enough, like, it requires Susan and I being like on the go, as well as our guests. And so I think it's a time for even us, like the doers, the people who are trying to do a lot, to maybe ease back, to breathe a little bit, and to, things like play, dance parties, Biggie, whatever, it allows you to kind of just, I don't know, be able to have some creativity and boredom in your day, which is important. And I use boredom broadly, just time to be, basically. So
I love that, Stacey. I think what you said about boredom, I think is a huge permission slip that I think everybody needs right now, because I don't know. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I own my own business, and so I work for myself. And so there can be this, and I'm sure many of your listeners are too, and you have this draw to continue to create and to continue to produce. And because there's a lot of layers that are associated with too, right? There's financial layers. This is your passion. This is your drive. This is what makes you happy. So you want to do all those things. And then you also, most entrepreneurs that I know, or, and most people that I know, want to provide, they want to support others and to help take care of other people around them. And so there can be this kind of layer of guilt for just kind of chilling, and not doing anything. And I remember earlier this week, my husband came downstairs and my daughter was napping, and I was just laid out on the sofa, just staring off into nothing. And he said, "You all right?" I'm like, "I've never felt better. Like, I'm just like full blown. I just want to loaf. Like, I just wanted to lay here and not think about anything. I didn't want my phone nearby. The TV wasn't on. It was just," and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, this is exactly what I needed." So I get what you mean. I like the idea of giving ourselves more permission to be bored and not constantly feel like we have to be producing or working on ourselves or making things better and all of that, all at the same time. Like, it's okay to just kind of be.
Yeah, that's something that I need to just revisit, I think. Because just like Stacey was saying, I was laughing when you were like, this is that's the whole purpose of the show. What we're doing is creating this time for people to just create or come back to joy or, experience connection and take that time for themselves. And I know that I'm using the show a lot of the time as a distraction from like my own thoughts and my own day, aside from like our check-in moment. But for that being just like a brief part of my day. Like, I know, just need to build it in and get back into it. So the next portion of our show is where I get to share a quote that Cristina shared with us. So I'm going to do a quick screen share and pull that up. And the quote that Cristina chose is, "The essential ingredient for true freedom is consciousness, an acute awareness, moment to moment, of who we really are and what we truly desire." It's by Anita Johnston. So, Cristina, would you mind sharing what it is about this quote that made you choose it today?
Yeah, so this brilliant, incredible woman is a PhD therapist who specializes in eating disorders. And this quote is pulled from my favorite book that I recommend to basically everybody who will listen to me, called Eating in the Light of the Moon. And what I really love about this quote so much is that it really helps you understand that your relationship with food is really ultimately a metaphor. And where you find the most freedom is by digging into your relationship with food, your relationship with yourself, and what food might be representing for you. And the more you can kind of get to the deeper sense of who you really are and what you're truly desiring, the more you can understand the deeper reasons for why you have certain types of associations with certain foods or desires for certain foods. And then from that, the more you have that, the more freedom you truly get in your relationship with your food and with your body and as yourself as a person. And so, yeah, that's why I chose this quote, because it's my favorite. And I really love it as a reminder to really take into account on a regular basis, what am I really asking for? What are my real needs here? And what do I need in this moment, on a deep soul level, you know? So that's why.
That's really beautiful. And I think that that's probably an intimidating question for a lot of people to ask themselves, even in the best of circumstances, let alone right now. And, I definitely want to have you share your thoughts on all of that. Before we do, I want to be able to have the pleasure of formally introducing you, Cristina, to our listeners, even though we've been chatting with you for a little bit now. But before we get in deeper with our conversation, Cristina is an integrative clinical nutritionist and body image coach, and she helps her clients cultivate a positive relationship with food and their body by integrating the principles of functional neutral nutrition, health at every size, and weight inclusive non-diet medical nutrition counseling. I met Cristina at a women's networking event like 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now. And I remember the exact moment when I heard her speak and introduce herself. It was like part of the structure of the meeting. And she described the types of clients that she helps. And I remember it exactly because I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. I need to connect with her. Like I wrote her name down. I was like, we need to chat. Because, I was someone that was experiencing all kinds of digestive issues and other like various health issues throughout like my entire life, had a wide range of tests and just wasn't getting a lot of relief or like accurate diagnoses or anything like that. So when Cristina and I connected, she not only helped me feel physically better by the plan that she created for me, but she just helped me look at food from a completely different perspective, helped me be kinder to my own body. And even now, we're not talking nearly as regularly as we were when I was one of her clients, but her social media, her messages that she puts out are so supportive and inspiring, and I just constantly have her voice in my head in the best ways. So I'm really happy to have her on today and to share with us, everything that she's willing to share. So, Cristina, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, now that you're gonna make me cry, so that's just like the sweetest thing to hear. So yeah, I mean, I guess if we want to get right into it, in a big way, we can talk about how right now, before we started really recording, Susan and I were kind of briefly catching up, and we were kind of talking about how it kind of feels like our relationship with food has been put on kind of like a microscope right now. And I think a big piece of it to me, I've been thinking about this a lot, and some of my colleagues and I have been thinking about this a lot too, is what is it about right now that is making our relationship with food feel so magnified and so polarizing too? Like we're pulling for food and we want to have all of the comforting foods at the same time, but then at the same time we're feeling really restrictive because we can't just go to the grocery store, we can't just do all those things. And then at the same time there's also still this message, even though we're in this really traumatizing state, still this message of don't gain weight, and if you do, you better lose it. That's happening too. And so I really wanted, when Susan approached me about talking about this, I really wanted to dive into what is this actually saying, and how my relationship with food in this moment might be saying about my relationship with food on a larger scale. And I think the truth is right now, and I give this as an invitation more than anything else, to get curious rather than me telling you what your stuff is. That's really what the quote's all about too. It's about digging into your own self and seeing what's going on and getting very curious, right? So this is merely an invitation. It's not me telling you what you should or should not be doing. If anything, it's almost letting go of that. But right now it's kind of like we're in this, I referenced it, and I have referenced it before, as kind of like a sick social experiment, where we are seeing very, very clearly the effects that we have on a psychological and on a physical level when there is a perceived and actual restriction from food. When we have a restriction from food, I refer to this often as the binge restrict cycle. What will happen is we restrict our food, we cut out a bunch of foods, and then what ends up inevitably happening is we end up eating and consuming a lot of the foods that we have now deemed as bad, right? Like that's what ends up happening. And we fall into this like really cyclical cycle. And we have different entry points for how we get in there. But right now we're in this very like a very real restrictive state where, like I said, we can't just go to the grocery store. We can't just get anything we want whenever we want it. And so we're kind of falling into this mindset of feeling, I'm feeling really restricted, but I also feel like I need to hoard all of these things. And at the same time, I feel out of control around the food that's here in my home all at the same time. And that in and of itself is like this little tiny, very like socially, like very like, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but like a very clear social, like a quiet social experience that you're having. And we're having it as a collective, right? Even though it's really personal, collectively, this is happening across the board, that we're seeing over and over again this pattern. And now we're seeing it right now. And we're seeing people being really drawn to wanting to start like a really restrictive protocol right now. And they're like, oh my gosh, I need to do this right now, because we find comfort in that, right? And so, but then what ends up happening is then we then fall into this restrict cycle, and then we end up getting, feeling guilty and feeling bad about ourselves and feeling hard on ourselves. And then what ends up happening, we feel like we need to be more strict. But now we're living in like, that's something that a pattern that we fall into a lot. And right now we're taking our normal pattern that we have, and then we're layering on the fact that we actually don't have access to a lot of the foods that we're used to, or the foods that we're comfortable with. The foods that we're comfortable with eating and things that we have deemed to be okay. And so when Susan asked me if I wanted to talk about this, I really wanted to bring this up and say, hey, the way that you're feeling about food right now should be giving you an indication of a much larger relationship that you have with food on a much larger scale, on a more regular basis, because this isn't happening in like a small, like acute stage. This is coming out as this happened, and now we're doing everything we can, and this is how we cope. This is how we come up with this. We default to what we know. And is this making sense? I hope it's making sense. But we end up falling back into this pattern, and it's almost like this pattern is comfortable. It's something that we know, it's something that we do, it's something that we fall into a lot, even though we feel really uncomfortable with it. This is something that we do a lot. And so what I wanted to talk about was providing you with an invitation of saying, okay, what is my feelings about food right now? What are my feelings about food right now? And what might this say about my relationship with food in general? And how has this pattern shown up previously? Because I highly doubt, if you're feeling this way right now, that this is the first time you've ever felt this way. about food. It's usually a lot of times you felt this way about food, and about your body too. Like that's a big piece as well. And so I wanted to just kind of shed light on that a little bit and kind of provide you with an invitation to get curious and to think about the foods that you're eating and the relationship and why you're feeling so uncomfortable around certain foods. What is it about that food, and what value have you tagged to that food, right? And that's a big piece of it too. We feel comfortable eating in a certain way because we have created this hierarchy of food on what we deem to be good and what we deem to be not okay on a regular basis. And the thing that makes right now really complicated is that a lot of the foods that a lot of people have deemed to be less than are the foods that are readily available. And so that's what makes it really, really hard to not fall into this type of cycle where we're feeling kind of restricted, like we can't get the foods that we're comfortable with. And then at the same time, we kind of feel like we have no control around food. So yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up with you guys today. A very light topic.
That's okay. That's why we brought you on. It's a necessary topic for sure, and I really appreciate your insight and your whole approach to it too. I had some thoughts kind of like going through my head when you were sharing about how people's perceptions of food really have seeming like they changed during these times, but they're more of a pattern, or they've happened in other points in their lives. And I was just thinking about, how some people who like to eat certain things in private now, like, are not getting any alone time. So how are they supposed to have those types of food without feeling that additional like shame that they might be putting on themselves, which is, what started that kind of behavior in the first place, or utilizing food as a form of control, because we're in a situation right now where so much is beyond our control. There's like so many of these patterns with food that are tied psychologically, I feel like, and I'm not really sure how many people are able to like make that connection, when they're in it, when they're in that moment. I mean,
Yeah.
what's your experience, your professional experience with that? Like, what has that been like working with clients during these times?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I kind of find it into like, I think you can kind of define it into stages. And I think a lot of my clients, that people that I've worked with regularly, are either actively already seeking treatment for disordered eating, or have an eating disorder that they know that they are well aware of, or they've been liberated. So what I call it is there's the falling into like I call it like the chronic dieting, chronic like protocol type pattern, right? Where you're always following a new diet and you're always starting a new one. There's that stage. And then there's kind of this, there has to be an education stage, right? Where you kind of get educated, start learning some more. You start getting frustrated. You're like, this is pointless. I hate doing this. I never feel like I get what I want, or I don't know why this isn't working for me anymore. So there could be like almost like an education / fed up stage could be happening. And then slowly what ends up happening is you kind of get to this stage where you're kind of liberated and you decided, I'm not going to follow that pattern anymore. I'm going to do what I can to try to get out of it. And so you start to work really hard to do what you can to get out of it. And it's really difficult because as you can imagine, based on what we've talked about so far, that this is layered. There are so many layers that are playing a role into why we fall into this pattern. But for right now, I hope I'm answering your question, Susan, but for right now, a lot of the things that I'm seeing for people is that sometimes people aren't really aware that it's a problem, or that it is different or not necessary. I think that's a big piece of it too, is because of how socially acceptable it is to be constantly dieting and constantly worried about food and wanting to eat a certain way. And now, especially now, like people are really hyper focused on their health. And so that can also be a very easy kind of entry point to kind of fall into some of these types of patterns that are ultimately really socially, like sometimes not only acceptable, but sometimes socially applauded, right? Like it's applauded to just start something like this. It's applauded to be like, oh, she's taking care of her health. Like she's doing all these things. And I'm not calling anyone out. I've done every single behavior I've ever I talk about, I have done. So I want to make that very clear. But I think that's the thing too, is that it's really difficult to be able to see because it's so normalized. And everybody's doing that, and everybody talks about it, and everybody encourages it, you know. And it's like I said, it's in some ways it's largely applauded. And I think that's what makes it so hard for so many people to get to the point where they realize, wow, I'm in this cycle, because they never knew that it was a problem to begin with. They just thought, oh, it's usually comes down to what's so amazing about why this is such an issue is because we love to blame ourselves, right? Like, so when it doesn't work, right? Like when we start a new program, like we've read all about it, like, oh my gosh, all these people having these great results, so-and-so did it and she did so great, and now she's like happy married and like has 5 children, you know, like, you know, like these are the types of things that people like that they say. And so when we see this over and over again, when it doesn't do that for us, or it doesn't give us the same result as it once did, we don't blame the system, we blame ourselves. And it's due to our low willpower, our low discipline. And so it kind of feeds into, again, that kind of guilt feeling, right, that we kind of talked about earlier. And then we kind of leads to this stage of being like, well, I don't have any willpower, so forget it. Like, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And then you fall back into that kind of restrictive pattern. And I think that's what makes it so difficult to see, because one, it hides a lot because there's so much shame with it. So if it's something that you can't do or you're struggling with, it's usually, we never think to blame the system, we blame ourselves. And that happens really privately in like really deep, quiet, internal conversation where we're standing there looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, why can't I do this right? Why am I such a failure? Rather than thinking about maybe the way that I have been told my whole life to do something has been wrong or not serving my highest good.
Yeah, and I think too, it's the element of we talked about this in an episode the other day that we recorded with a fitness personal trainer, and she was talking about the all or nothing kind of principle, and the fact that really what many of us need to come back to is the source of kind of contentment and happiness around things like, in her case, fitness, in this case, I think food, as opposed to the all or nothing of, you know, she had mentioned, like, if I can't get in a perfect workout, that's my exact thing that fits my exact timing and way to get in shape, I'm not going to do anything. And there's no point. And my health and myself is not even worth it enough to do any kind of other movement. And I think it can largely be the case like that with food too. It's the all or nothing, like people feel like they have to be so boxed into what it looks like, or they're, you know, X number of salads per week, or, you know, whatever it is. And then that's all taken off the table right now in large part because we can't get, as you said, get access to certain foods. We can't go out and maybe get those salads that, you know, and it puts a magnifying lens on really what is our relationship with that. And I was talking earlier too with my husband about the other interesting thing I think about this time frame we're in is that because we can't go anywhere, right? Like, we're not really in our cars, we're not driving to offices for the most part. It also puts into perspective maybe ways we're eating on a normal basis that we're not now, and maybe certain ways that were kind of abusing food, you know, on a normal basis that we weren't aware of. So my husband, for instance, you know, someday, like he would have pizza twice a week when he would drive into the office. He'd stop at Wawa, buy like, you know, M&Ms or this, that, the other, eat it in the car. And so it was interesting. We got in this discussion about food of what do we do on a normal basis also that like we can't actually replicate now. So then what do we put in? How do we fill that in? How do we then kind of find a different way of doing that pattern that's not healthy? It's a sort of addictive pattern around food. So yeah, there's just so many levels to kind of how this shakes out in our current predicament for so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think while you were talking, I was thinking about the pattern that we fall into like this. Like I said, it's not only we have so many rituals around food too that we fall into that we don't realize that we're falling into it or we're not aware of, right? And I think one thing too that I think is kind of bringing to light right now is a lot of people are complaining about, oh, I feel like I'm emotionally eating or I'm stress eating and I need to be controlling that. And I think one huge piece of that that's kind of missing is the knowledge that food is not only for fuel, right? Like food is inherently emotional, right? We eat in celebration, we eat in sadness, we eat in stress. And right now there's kind of this call to, oh, I'm doing a lot of emotional eating. I need to like get that under control. And the truth is so much of that is perfectly fine. Like it's not a bad thing. Food is inherently emotional. It's not only for fuel or for nutrient repletion and things like that. Like it's not, I mean, there is, I mean, I'm a nutritionist, right? So I obviously love the food science of things and biochemistry. I nerd out on all of it. So I'm not ignoring that piece exists, right? But to say that the other side doesn't, or that needs to be controlled is really unfair, especially in times right now, because like I said, food is inherently emotional and we're in a really emotionally vulnerable state. And if we're shaming ourselves for utilizing food to bring us joy or comfort, or to help us in our moments of sadness or in our moments of stress, and then we're layering on top of that guilt for having that type of behavior because socially it's deemed as something kind of negative, then that's adding more fuel to a fire that never needed to get started to begin with. And we should be celebrating the fact that we have the ability, if we do have the ability, to use food as a way to bring some joy in a not so joyous occasion, right? Like, and I think that needs to be spoken about more, and that I feel like needs to be normalized a lot more, is that food is emotional. And right now, like, again, like, you know, you think back on moments where you were like so happy, or like there was a big celebration that was happening, or you just got a promotion at work or whatever it is, and you like pop a bottle of champagne, you pull out the macaroons and you're like having a great time, or like someone brings you by like your favorite donuts or what have you. And those are the types of moments that, like, right now we need those types of moments. We need those types of things happening in the home, and to bring us some happiness and to bring us some joy, because some of the things that we would ordinarily use to help us bring more joy that wasn't only focused on food, right? Maybe it's meeting up with friends and going swimming. I mean, it's not warm enough yet, but like going swimming or something with your friends, or playing basketball, or I don't even know, going to a yoga class, or going to I'm a big fan of like moon circles or something like that, like that you could get together and be part of like a collective pulse. You know, we don't have that right now. And so to use food to kind of fill that when we can't use the other things that we do on a normal basis, I think is a really beautiful and a really smart way for our bodies and for us to be telling us, I need more comfort, so I'm going to lean on what's available to me right now. And food is a really natural thing to fall into right now, you know? That doesn't mean that it can be the only source for joy. For some people it is, you know, like some people, they don't have other sources, you know, they don't have other things happening right now, or they haven't learned other techniques for how you can cope and work through big emotions, right? And so utilizing food is a really protective and a really beautiful way of doing that, and a really support, not only just protective and beautiful, but also like one effective and efficient too. Especially when right now kind of cultivating new things might be overwhelming, you know, like it's really hard to start new ways of and new practices when we're in a completely overwhelmed stress state. You know, and that's why earlier I kind of mentioned briefly about how we do what we know too, and that plays a big role here also. We know food, we know this control through food pattern, and so this is really a really great time if you're noticing that kind of tug at wanting to create some kind of system around food for yourself, or creating some type of plan around food, or maybe you're even contemplating doing the next round of X, Y, and Z protocol. I think it's a really great time to invite yourself to ask, why do I feel so drawn to do this? What do I think it's going to provide for me? And if I continue going deeper into the whys, is this a way for me to control something? And can I really control this? And what other things can I do in replacement of that, instead of doing something that, you know, like it's just a good invitation for exploration. You might still do it, you know, and that's fine. Like you have to, again, you do what you know, but I think it's a really great period to kind of, like I said, an invitation to get curious and to ask yourself, what might this say about my relationship with food? And could I dig deeper into this? And is this something worth exploring? And do I want to go deeper into this? And do I feel like this is something that could be a benefit for me? Or do I identify with this type of pattern? Am I using this as like, is this my way of kind of dealing with things? You know, definitely have been there, you know. And I'm a disordered eating disorder, you know, coach and nutritionist, and I feel that way too. Like it's not it's a practice, you know, that takes time. But that's just, you know, that's kind of what I was thinking about when you were talking about that. And this emotional aspect of food is, I think, sometimes largely really discredited when it needs a lot more credit as being really a really powerful thing to do and use, because it is really joyful.
I know that Stacey and I have connected a lot on how we've both been able to spend some of this time like cooking and baking with our sons. And like, I think that, you know, while you see some of that on social media of, you know, people who are cooking with their children or with their families in ways that they might not have done or may not have done as often prior to all of this. I think that that's another way of looking at the emotional comforting side of food too, is that it can be a further expression of love and connection with the people who you're currently in quarantine with right now.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up, because it totally is that. It is a sense of connection. It also provides a sense of community too, right? Everyone's doing stuff, like, I don't know about you guys, but we just, some friends of ours gifted us like their buy one, get one masterclass. Have you guys heard of this? So it's a really cool online kind of like learning platform. But we were watching an episode the other day by a pastry chef, And he was like explaining all these ways, but all of this, and I'm thinking to myself the whole time, there is so much thought and so much care and so much love that goes into doing this. And here, you know, we're talking about like, oh, you know what, that'd be really fun. Let's make that, like, let's do this together. This is something that we can do. And it does, it brings like food brings people together in a really beautiful way. And I love that you brought that up, because we so deeply need connection, and we so deeply need a reminder of connection and love, and I think community too. And as we're looking up different recipes and we're sharing about it, you know, my husband, his business, his company that he works for uses Slack, and they have a whole cooking channel on their Slack thing where everyone's talking about sharing what they're making and what they're doing and sharing recipes. And to me, that is building connection and community, right? People are engaging and talking about that all together. And I think that that's such a big piece right now. That's so needed. So I'm glad you reminded me of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think too, you know, in addition to our little, you know, nuclear unit in our house, you know, whatever that might be, if you're by yourself maybe, or you have just your partner and kids, there's also ways, you know, if you're doing a Zoom party or something like that, like I'm organizing that one for next weekend as like a mini baby shower kind of thing. And one of the kind of things in the schedule is like, I want you to make something delectable. You define delectable, it doesn't matter to me, but like something that makes you feel just good to eat and to make. Or if you don't feel like making it, that's fine too. You know, like whatever you define as like something joyful with food that you can bring into this like mini community that we're doing for this, you know, hour on Zoom or whatever. So I think there's so many ways creatively too that you can think about, you know, how do you reframe, you know, even especially if you're having some negative connections with food right now, how do you maybe reframe it to be more connecting, to be more joyful, to, you know, for your immediate family, for anybody you're coming in contact with during this time? Because I think yeah, I mean, any infusion of joy we can get is so important right now.
Absolutely. That's such a fun way to do a shower right now, even though you can't do it in person. That's a fun way of doing it. I love how you're incorporating food into it. Another example that might be kind of fun for people is, I know this is for someone who's single. So a friend of mine is single and she lives by herself, and she's been doing cooking parties with her friends, and they all make something together, and they're all kind of chatting in the kitchen while they're kind of cooking. I think that's so much fun. You know, everyone's like kind of like having a glass of wine, they're making their stuff, they're bouncing around their kitchen, and they have their friends there along the way. It kind of feels like you're having like your own little mini dinner party, which, you know, which is so needed, you know. So I love this.
One of the guests that we had on recently, her name is Miss Wondersmith, and she shared a lot of like really beautiful ways that you can have gatherings, even if they're virtual, and incorporating food or cooking together. And I think that episode, and then hearing you share about it too, Cristina, and Stacey's idea, just like helping to, I think, give me more inspiration and courage to start branching out that way too. And yeah, I'm excited about that. And I think it's important too to have different ways that you can get excited and be hopeful or looking forward to different types of events right now, since our options are so limited. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that.
You're welcome. This has been so wonderful, and I hope it's beneficial to everyone who's listening or will listen later. And I hope hopefully for you guys, I was able to provide you guys with, I hope, a little bit of a relaxation of the shoulders for yourself around food a little bit more, and to cultivate more joy and to get more curious about what anxieties you might be having around food might be saying, what it might be telling you about your relationship with food, and how you might be able to work through that, even in like little small steps right now. It'd be really great to do.
Thank you so much for everything, Cristina. Thank you for being here and for being you. What is the best way for people to contact you if they would like to work with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so my main party happens on Instagram, not gonna lie. So I'm at Cristina Hoyt Nutrition is my Instagram handle. I'm also CristinaHoyt.com is my website if you want to check that out. There's no H in Cristina, I'm Spanish style. So it's Cristina Hoyt. And then also too, I do have a Facebook community actually that that I am a part of as well, but you might be like kind of like Facebooked out, I have no idea, but there is one called the non-diet community, and it's with me and my colleague and business partner Dana Monsees, and we would love to have you join us if you're interested. And it's really just a collective of individuals who are ready to kind of move forward with this kind of non-dieting, really supportive, body neutral kind of approach. So we'd love to have you there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cristina. As someone who has also had a complex relationship with food in the past and continues to, this has been enormously helpful. And I know that many listeners will really resonate with what you've said and the conversation we've had together. So thank you so much. And we always end our episode with the same quote from a Mary Oliver poem, which is, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" So thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode, and we hope you have a really good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.